Good morning, everyone. I wanted to welcome you to today's SBA application presentation for both the EIDL and PPP programs. Today, Marcia McGavis will be taking us through the presentation with assistance from Chris Walk, who is our PA SBDC Information Technology Director, and from Solomon Wheeler, who is the Harrisburg SBA branch manager and our project officer for the SBDC network in Pennsylvania. So I wanted to welcome Solomon first to say a few words, if you would, Solomon, on behalf of SBA.
Yep, absolutely. Good morning, everyone. My name is Solomon Wheeler, and I'm the Harrisburg branch manager for SBA. SBA is tremendously proud to partner with the Pennsylvania Small Business Development Center network to provide economic relief to Pennsylvania's businesses. We continue to learn more and more about the two key programs that have been rolled out. We're seeing tremendous volume with the EIDL program. We're seeing well over 2 million applications in under the PPP program. The last numbers I took a look at, over 265,000 applications for over $71 billion. So applications are being taken, they're being approved, money's being dispersed. So we encourage all small businesses to continue to apply, learn what you need to learn about the business, about the programs, but certainly we encourage you to apply. Look forward to your questions today. Thank you.
Thank you, Solomon. Just a few housekeeping items. If you would post your questions in chat as Marcia goes through her presentation, I will try to pose those questions at the time when she's touching on that topic during her presentation. Also, those of you on YouTube, please use the chat feature there, as I will be monitoring that as well. With that, I want to introduce Marcia McGavis, who is our PA SBDC Director of Capital Acquisition. Marcia brings over 30 years of SBA lending experience from a commercial bank perspective, and she's been with us a little over a year now in her capacity with the SBDC network, where she does consulting as well with clients on the various SBA programs. So Marcia, take it away.
Thanks, Ernie. Good morning, everybody. Ooh, I forgot my bottle of water. So bear with me, please. Yeah, so we're gonna dive right into this. Things are changing. Almost every morning we get up, there's some new information that we receive. So bear with us as they're working through this. I think even before we dive in, one of the things I want to say is, you know, the SBA is doing their level best to handle this program, and I think they're doing a great job. I've been dealing with this agency for over 30 years. Their systems and the organization was never designed to deal with this kind of volume, and what they had to, and especially in such a short time frame. These loans are usually for, you know, isolated disasters like floods, hurricanes, tornadoes, things like that. So it's usually an isolated area, and it's, you know, it's a little easier. The volume isn't the same as, you know, you just heard Solomon say how many applications are in hand. That is unheard of. I cannot even imagine going through that many applications and trying to figure it all out. They've hired additional people to assist, and they've done a mad scramble to, you know, to fix things as they become an issue. And, you know, they're doing a great job. I mean, I think a prime example of that is when they started the EIDL program, and, you know, the application process was just so onerous for the business owners. They couldn't get through it, and the site was crashing. And in the space of only a week, they had a completely new process that is now working. The applications are absolutely easy to get through. I said, anybody who can't do this application really shouldn't be in business at this point, but it is easy. There's very little information. I think the only challenge is primarily for the nonprofits, because the application wasn't designed for nonprofits either. So we're guiding them through the best we can. So just hang in there, everybody. Be patient, please. I know it's a terrible time, and it's hard to be patient when, you know, you've had to close your business and all of a sudden, through no fault of your own, and you know, you have no resources. So, you know, we get that, and everybody is doing their level best to make sure that you guys are getting some assistance. So let's dive into it. The PA-SBDC disruption recovery page is where you can go for the SBDCs to either get a copy of this recording. They're out there as well. The forms, some of the forms and things are out there, and there's, we try to keep information out there. Also SBA, you can go to SBA and they are constantly updating the information that is out there as things unfold. So just keep that in mind. These are some of our other services for under our, what we normally do besides, disaster assistance. These are some of our services. We just list them there so that you are aware, because a lot of people are not aware of our services, and our services are free. So why anybody wouldn't take advantage of them, I have no idea. We have a lot of talent in the network to assist you. The SBA has 2 district offices in Pennsylvania, one in the east in King of Prussia. This is the contact information for them. And then there is also one on the western side of the state in Pittsburgh. This is their contact information. So they are available to help as well. We're trying to assist them the best we can because they are swamped with all of this. So we're trying to answer a lot of the questions ourselves. Because I mean, like I said, I've got 30 years. I can answer questions on a lot of this stuff. Sometimes I get stuck too. And then I go to the SBA. This is a map of the SBDCs across the state. There are 16 of them, all covering, specific counties. So you would go to the SBDC for the county that you live in. This is contact information. This can also be found on the PA-SBD website, how to get in touch with the centers. Next, please, Chris. All right, we've been taking lots and lots of questions. We're going to try to do just the basic overview today. We understand there are specific situations that actually need to be addressed individually at times, and some of those make us pause for a moment and really have to think hard. So we're going to talk about who's eligible, what you need to have on hand to file your application. We're going to actually walk through the application with you. You need to understand realistic timelines. When you hear things like they have over 2 million applications just for the EIDL program, and now closing in on 300,000 for the PPP program, you need to be realistic about how quickly some of this can happen, although loans are being funded at this point. We'll also talk a little bit about how they're estimating these loans, or how they're coming up with the amounts for the loans. And then the support that's available to you, not just SBA and the SBDC, but you've got certified economic development organizations out there. You've got the state economic development organization, women's business centers, SCORE, chambers of commerce, veterans organizations. They're all out there to help you and guide you through the process. There are also a ton of webinars that are going on all over the place, to try and help as well. So let's start with the EIDL program. That was the first one. That's the one that is a direct loan from, it's approved by the SBA and it's funded by the US Treasury. So the funds come directly from the government for this program. And this is for a loan up to $2 million. And it's up to 30 years for profit businesses at 3.75% and nonprofit businesses at 2.75%. So the SBA is going to make the determination about the amount. There's no place even on the application for you to state that. All you're giving them is your revenue and your cost of goods sold and your operating expenses totals for the most recent 12 months or the last calendar year. They may come back. I don't know if we have last I knew, we didn't have a sense of if they were coming back asking for additional information or if they were just funding based on the information provided on the application. We're saying that even if you don't know if you're going to need the money, apply for it anyhow. You have up to 6 months to make a determination of whether you're going to apply for it or whether you're going to need it or not. Credit score is one of the most important things that they look at. So you want to be sure you understand what your credit score is. I mean, if you haven't checked it lately, you can go on a site like Credit Karma and check your score. If there's derogatory comments on there, you need to be able to address those so that, you know, it will give you a chance when they come back to you. If they do decline you for the credit score or anything else, you do have up to 6 months to go back to them with additional information in writing and to try and get them to reconsider. So, and I have seen that over the years with normal programs where we've gotten an initial decline and then go back with additional information, and they do reconsider it and often will then turn around and approve. As I said, you won't be asked about the loan amount. It's going to be based on, for businesses where this applies, to your gross margin. So basically it's about 6 months of your gross margin. This program, we might as well go to the next slide, and I'll get in there into some of this. They might, if they do ask you for additional information, and again, we don't have a handle right now on whether that's happening or not. I'm hoping to have information on that in the next week by people who have been through the process and approved already. But if you do have documents that they need, and if you don't have a scanner that can scan documents, you know, all into one file, if all you can do is a page at a time, I suggest you take a flash drive and whatever the document is, be it a tax return or other document, and take it to a copy center like a Staples or someplace like that, and scan it onto the flash drive and then upload it into the computer from there. The one thing we're going to really emphasize, because of what we're hearing about this, and now this applies to both programs, but it is imperative that you document how you are using the funds, and they need to be used for an eligible purpose. Now, the EIDL loan is a loan. It will have to be paid back regardless. And like I said, it's up to 30 years, but they are going to look for documentation to show you use this money the way you're supposed to. So just keep that in mind. And, you know, my recommendation is set up an Excel spreadsheet and, you know, just track and then gather the documents, put everything in one file, and make sure you're retaining that documentation so that when you're asked to provide proof that you used the money appropriately, you have that proof. Because they are watching this. So next slide, please. This is our administrator. She's the one at the top trying to figure it all out as it you know comes down from on high, and basically get it out there and get this thing working. And like I said, I'm quite impressed. I don't think I've ever seen, although there have been some bumps in the road and probably will continue to be so, I've never seen the SBA react so quickly to something that was, especially something of this magnitude that was dumped on them in a very short period of time. All 17, basically all states, all territories, all counties are eligible at this point. This is a nice one. There is a 1-year deferment on the EIDL loan that, in other words, you won't have payments for that first year, which is really, really nice. That's a very nice feature of the loan till hopefully you can get back on your feet. There are also automatic deferments for previous disaster loans for homeowners and businesses through 2020. Also, if you have an existing normal SBA loan that you've gotten, there is a 6-month period the SBA is actually making payments for you. So you will have 6 months of payments made by the SBA. So if you have a loan that is on auto debit with your bank, like a 7A loan, you want to contact the bank and have them take it off of auto debit, because the SBA is giving the bank funds directly. Now, you are supposed to have a choice whether you want the money back, because there are payments have already been made. You are supposed to have an option of, if you want the money back, you can get the money back, or you can have it applied to the loan, but it's supposed to be your choice. So, and they're talking about a deferment here on existing 7A and 504, but in fact, it's actually a form of debt forgiveness for a 6-month period. Next slide, please. So which businesses are eligible? All small businesses, excuse me, agricultural cooperatives and small aquaculture businesses are eligible. Most private nonprofit organizations are eligible, and faith-based organizations are also now available. In addition to that, we just found out, I think it was yesterday, sort of runs together sometimes, that farmers are now eligible as well. So even if you're growing crops and raising livestock, you are eligible to apply for this. There are a lot of firsts. I'm sorry, Solomon.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
And we'll get clarity on that. We'll double check that one, but under PPP, they're definitely eligible.
Oh, so not under the EIDL though?
Yeah, the direct farm activities under EIDL at this point are still not eligible. Value add, I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, I'm glad you did. I don't want to confuse things out there any more than they are confused. So this is EIDL. So it's the small businesses, agricultural cooperatives. So if it's an ag related business, like they're producing feed for livestock or, making cheese or any other thing that is related to ag, but is not actually growing crops or raising livestock. As Simon said, we'll get clarification. They are eligible under the PPP right now. That's the one we did here. So it is, but on this one, it is most nonprofit organizations and faith-based organizations are eligible as well. Next. How much can I borrow? You can qualify for up to $2 million, but again, you're not going to determine the loan amount. The SBA will make a determination based on the information you provide. Interest rate is 3.75% for for-profit businesses and 2.75% for nonprofit organization, with terms up to 30 years. Under this program, there is an advance that can be done of up to $10,000. That advance is determined by SBA. We had been talking about a calculation, but they're saying no, don't use any kind of a calculation. It's just the amounts will vary based on the information that is provided. So this program is based on the business being a small business under SBA guidelines. And correct me if I'm saying this wrong, Solomon, I get this backwards sometimes. So it's average annual revenue of up to $5 million and net worth not to exceed $15 million. And the revenue is average over 2 years. There is also
just to correct this, so it's average of net income. This is the alternative size there. So average of net income cannot exceed 5 million.
Okay.
Tangible net worth is correct. That's 15 million tangible net worth. As long as you're under that 15 million, you're considered small. But the other thing, individual businesses can do, there's an SBA size standard lookup based on your NEGS code. It'll be based on revenue or employees. Generally, we're seeing, under 500 employees, you're going to be considered small. And most small businesses are captured in this country are captured on that size table. 96, 97% of all small businesses are captured on that table.
Yeah, thank you, Solomon. Yes, so the alternative is also applicable, as he said. So, give it a whirl. There are some affiliation things that we'll get into later that you do need to look at for some of these loans, not all, but for some of them. So we'll talk about that when we get there. How can you use these funds? This is a working capital program. So the loans can be used to pay fixed debts, payroll, accounts payable, and other bills that could have been paid had the disaster not occurred. So it's not designed to replace lost sales or lost profits, or for expansion. It is for you to be able to pay the rent, pay the bills, pay your payroll. The only thing you can't do, you can't double dip under this. So if you apply for this loan for for payroll, you won't necessarily be able to apply for the PPP loan certainly not for the same period of time. So we'll get into a little bit more of that detail when we get to PPP. But you can use it for your fixed debts, like if you have other commercial loans, accounts payable, anything like that, utility bills are eligible. So just keep those in mind. And again, I'm going to say this quite a few times as we're doing this, document how you're using the funds. That is imperative. Next slide, please. Applicants, you can request in advance. You'll see there's a block on the application. It allows you to check the box and say, yes, I'd like to be considered for an advance of up to $10,000. We had been telling everybody those advances were coming within 3 days. That is not happening. I don't know where they stand right this minute. I just know that as of Friday, people who had applied on Monday, didn't have their money yet. So from that, but that amount, whatever it is, will be forgiven, does not have to be paid back. So, but you do still need to use it for eligible purposes and retain documentation, because you could be asked at any time to show that documentation. It's really important. Because, in having done this for so long, basically what I like to tell people is that if it's not documented, it never happened. So just keep that in mind. How do you request in advance? You just submit the new streamlined application through the website, and you'll see it's pretty easy. Okay, how do we use the advance? We already talked about this. It's for debts, payroll, accounts payable, utility bills, anything like that. And we already talked about the advance, that it's determined by SBA and you won't need to pay it back. Even if you're declined for the EIDL loan, you would not have to give back any advance that's been given to you. Next, please. These loans are, how are they different from other SBA loans? These come directly from the US Treasury. So that's a big difference. The SBA program typically does not work that way. It's usually through the banks or through a CDC for a 504 loan. You go directly to the disaster assistance program on the SBA website. You actually don't even have to remember that whole string. If you just go to sba.gov, there a series of clicks and it'll take you to the application. It's not hard to find. There's no obligation to take the loan if it's offered. You, like I said, have about 6 months to make up your mind whether you're going to need it or not. Collateral is only required on loans over $25,000. So under $25,000, it's no collateral and no personal guarantees. Actually, personal guarantees only kick in if the loan exceeds $200,000. So the only thing they're doing for collateral on the loans is they're just taking a blanket lien UCC one on all of the business collateral. They're not taking real estate, either personal or commercial. And if there is not sufficient collateral, it doesn't matter. It's a blanket lien in a subordinate lien position if you actually already have, debt from a bank. So keep that in mind. You can also have an existing SBA disaster loan and still qualify for EIDL. It's just that they won't be able to consolidate those two loans. So you'll end up with two separate loans. Next, please. For the ineligible, right now we are still saying that actual farms are not eligible under this particular program. They are eligible under the PPP, but we're going to get more clarity on that and see if that's one of the things that changes, because as we said, things are changing rather frequently. You also are not eligible if you're involved in an illegal activity. Think marijuana. Any marijuana related businesses would not be eligible. Businesses whose primary purpose is gambling. So if more than a third of the revenue for the business comes from legal gambling activities, you're not eligible for the program. Think Pennsylvania Lottery as an example. Now, typically, you know, a grocery store or any other kind of, you know, small shop that sells lottery tickets, they're not deriving a third of their income from lottery sales. Next, please. You can apply online. As I said, go to sba.gov and sign in. This application probably won't take you half an hour to fill out. It's that easy. The other thing you can do, if you don't have internet access, and this actually has come up a couple of times now, where an applicant, you know, in particular Amish don't, you know, they don't have those kinds of things. So there is a way to access the program, but you have to call the customer service center, SBA's customer service center, in order to get that information of how to apply. And then also correspondence can be mailed to the processing and disbursement center. Okay. Resource partners, I think we've already hit on this. SBDC, SCORE, Women's Business Centers, Veterans Outreach, Chambers of Commerce. You know, SBA, we're trying to help the SBA as much as we can by answering as many questions as possible ourselves, because they are swamped. They're swamped now, not only with individual clients contacting them or borrowers contacting them, but also the banks who are doing the PPP loans. So they have double duty these days. This is the beginning of the application form. This is the first thing you see when you actually get to the application. It's a series of five sections. This first section are the disclosures. You have to answer questions, and it's going to be the first thing that determines your eligibility. So, and this is all part of that slide. So you're going to have to select the entity, the type of entity that you have here. If you don't fall into one of these entities, then you're probably not eligible for the loan. Next, please. And then these are a series of questions asking. So just realize these questions are written backwards. I'm kind of used to it after 30 years. They somehow like to do that, but that's the way they've always been. So just make sure you're reading the questions carefully, and you need to be able to check off all of these in order to be eligible. Basically what it is once you do the check marks, all the check marks, and do all do all the answers, your button at the bottom that says continue turns blue from gray, and you're able to proceed. But if you don't answer everything, you won't be able to continue. Next, please. So that was it for the first section. It's all eligibility stuff. The second section is information on the individual business. This is the main thing they're using to make a determination about your business and the amount of the loan, as you will see. So basically,
Marcia, do you have a minute for a couple questions?
Sure.
From Two Sisters in the Wild on the YouTube channel, is there a list of what is acceptable expenses if a client does receive the EIDL, the first initial $10,000 advance from EIDL, but then does not get the loan? How can a business be sure they are spending it correctly?
Rent, utilities, loan payments on regular commercial loans, not any SBA loans. Can't use it for that existing. No federally guaranteed or federal loans, but there's a lot of stuff that's eligible. Just the rent and utilities. If you're getting $10,000 payroll, I mean, you can use it for payroll too. So I don't know that they published a list of things, but it's anything that, you're not going to use it to improve your website. That would not be eligible. Think what the money, the money you would ordinarily receive, revenues for the business, it's not meant to replace that. It is meant to help you pay your fixed expenses, basically, over a period somewhere between February 15th and the end of the year. This program is good from February 15th through December 21st is the time frame.
Okay, thank you.
So when you start on the application, all the little green bars you see to the left of the information that you type in will be red. And as you fill this in, those little bars turn green. And when everything has turned green or has been checked off where there's a red asterisk, then you'll be able to submit the actual application, or you'll move to the next screen, sorry. So it looked for basic name of the business, the address and telephone number. It's asking whether you're a franchise. So you're going to supply, they want the 12-month period prior to the date of the disaster, prior to January 31st, 2020. So you'll put your revenue in there, and if you have a cost of goods sold item, most corporations do, but some service organizations and sole proprietors, typically do not. Some do, but if you don't, but if you do have a cost of goods sold, you're going to put that in there. And then if you have rental property where you've lost rent as well. Now, this is not for major developers, but for, if you have, say there's a rented portion of your business property and that person's not paying you rent, that would be an amount you'd put in here. If you have apartment buildings, that is also eligible. Also the cost of operations, that's your fixed operating expenses for the prior 12 months. All of this information is what they're going to use to determine the amount of the loan. There is also a spot for, there are some instances where, like if a church owns a daycare that is, more of a for-profit business, that daycare is eligible, even though, so you'd have to provide, that's what that means, set operating expenses for the 12 months prior to the date of the disaster for all secular social services provided by the faith-based entity. So that's what that means. And then you'd have to list those services. And then the next one down is if you've received any funds from any other program, that very last question, from any other program as a result of the disaster, you would need to disclose that. And then you have to describe those compensation sources in that box at the top. So then they want the primary business address. It cannot be a PO box. They want to know the physical location of the business. And then business phone number. We strongly urge to make sure you give them an accurate phone number and an accurate email address, because that's how you're going to, one of those two ways is how you will be contacted. Next, please. So like I said, business email is there. Then they want to know the date the business was established and how long the current owner has owned the business, because a lot of businesses get sold generation to generation or for whatever various reasons. So you want the original date, how long they've actually been in business, and then how long the current ownership has been there. And then you're going to select what the business does. And then with all that information completed, you're going to move to the next section. But this is an important one right here that I want to explain. Is your business owned by another business entity? Sometimes a company has a parent company that may own a number of other business entities underneath that parent company, and each would have its own separate EIN number. If that's the case, they want to know who the parent company is, and they're going to look for information. All of this has to do with affiliation. So that's why they're asking for this information. And so basically, if anybody owns, say they have a controlling interest in another business, under normal SBA guidelines, that other entity might be required to guarantee, but for this loan, they're just looking at it for eligibility. They're going to combine, like if it's per employees, they're going to combine any entities that the owner who is applying, they're going to combine how many total employees all of the entities have. And as long as it's less than 500, they would still be eligible. Next, please. Now we're getting into the individual owner information. You will need to fill this out entirely, list your percentage of ownership. Anybody who owns 20% or more of the business will need to fill out one of these forms. So you are going to require to put in a social security number and a telephone number and your title, all that good personal stuff. Now, this is where it gets a little tricky with nonprofits, because we've had a lot of questions about nonprofits. Who should fill this out for the nonprofit? This is just a vehicle to get this in the queue for SBA. So we are saying whoever has fiduciary responsibility for the nonprofit is the one who should fill out this form. You're going to need your social security number. You're going to have to answer all the qualifying questions, but just realize at the end of the day, what they're going to actually ultimately need is a resolution from the board saying that the board is okay with the organization getting this loan, and then certifying, the funds. So, but this must be filled out or you won't be able to complete the application. Again, this was not designed for the entities that are eligible to apply today for a disaster loan. This is pretty much standard information that they would request under a natural disaster, which is what the whole system was set up for. So next slide, please. And then they're looking, this is just a continuation of the personal information, where you were born, are you a US citizen? And then at the very bottom, you're going to see you can add an additional owner. So you'll be able to click on that for as many owners as you need to make up, everybody who owns 20% or more. Next, please. Now you're in the fourth section. The fourth section is a series of questions. This first part, you need to be able to answer no. They are actually even being, based on what I saw yesterday, very generous in terms of what SBA looks at is if you've ever been arrested or convicted of anything other than a minor motor vehicle offense, usually there's a clearance process you have to go through. They are relying now on self-certification. So now if you're currently suspended, debarred, or on parole, you're not going to be eligible. But if you have, say, even a felony that was committed at least 5 years prior, anybody, you would be eligible. And that is not normally the case. There's usually it can take a month or more to get the clearance. A lot of them are often cleared anyhow, but they're allowing, they're being very generous with this program. The one thing I want to caution you on, though, you are going to certify all of these things. And you don't want to lie to the federal government. They will come after you. And if you use the funds for fraudulent purposes, they will come after you. May not be tomorrow or next week or even next year, but they will come after you. So
Marcia?
just be truthful. Yes.
We've got a couple questions here on YouTube. If you got them, you and Solomon
Sure.
have them.
Yep.
So can the funds be used to pay off outstanding business debt with the IRS if payment plan is in place?
No, I don't think so, because you can't use federal funds to pay taxes, back taxes. Right, Solomon? I think it applies here.
Yeah, so under the EIDL, they're typically payments for any type of direct federal debt is ineligible. But there are circumstances in which IRS obligations can be utilized. It would have to be on a payment plan that is current. But like you've been saying, just document the use of funds. The point of this is to be used, this loan is to be used for working capital. And that's the key piece. But there are some exceptions around that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you just have to disclose probably when somebody reaches out to you.
And here's another one. Kim completed the EIDL application last night, but lost the application before hitting submit. She printed the application during review. Is there a way to go back in and submit, or does she have to start over?
It doesn't save. There's no way to save it. So that is gone. If she did not hit the submit button, there's no way to go back to it. She'd have to go in and put the information in all over again and then hit submit.
Thank you. And then another individual is required by DEP to improve his business water treatment system. Can the EIDL loan funds be used for the DEP requirement?
I don't think so, no.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's a property improvement, and that's not what this is intended for. This is intended for normal operating expenses and payroll.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so there are two parts to this particular segment of the application, so we'll go down to the next one. If you have to be able to answer no to all of those questions. If you've gotten any assistance with this, whether or not they've been compensated or not, you're going to fill in this information, and then it's your choice whether you want to give them permission to talk to that individual. But you also have to disclose if there was a fee charged on the loan, because you're not supposed to be charged fees for these disaster recovery loans. This is where you check the box at the very bottom for the up to a $10,000 advance under the EIDL loan program. So if you want to be considered for that, you're going to check that box. And even if you're declined for the loan ultimately, and you've gotten the advance, you don't have to pay it back. Next, please. And then because they're going to do that deposit pretty quickly, you need to provide the name of your bank, the account number you want the funds to go into, and also the routing number. For those of you who don't know what a routing number is, look at the bottom of your checks. All the way, there's a series of numbers all the way to the left. That's the routing number that identifies the bank. So you need that as well. And then you're stating that everything you're telling SBA is true and correct. You must be truthful. As I said, they take great exception to anybody committing fraud by using taxpayer dollars. So that's why that's important. You're going to check that box stating that you agree to everything and everything you've given is true and correct, and then you can go to the next section of the application. And the final one is a place where you can check all the information you put in the prior 4 sections. It gives you an opportunity to go back and edit and change anything that you find that you did not state correctly originally. And then you check off that you are not a robot, hit the submit button, and you will immediately be given an application number. You want to keep that number because that's the number that you'll use if you need to send them any additional information, but that's how they will then identify you, with that number. And that's the end of that slide deck. So we're going to go, well, Chris, I don't know if you have anything else, Ernie, while Chris is loading the next section in.
So Susie, will we be notified that we have been approved, or will be receiving the advance, or are we just watching our bank account to see if funds are deposited?
I'm not sure if they're notifying or if they're just depositing the money. I would say watch the bank account for any, deposits that you weren't expecting, and that could be it. It's probably going to show that it's coming from the U.S. Treasury. So, but I don't know if they're notifying people of that or not.
Okay, and from Susan, are subscription services for software used to complete your job eligible? The software she uses is subscription only, paid yearly for one and paid monthly for others.
That's an operating expense, I would think. Solomon, do you agree?
Yeah, I would agree. If it's just a normal operating expense, she needs to pay that subscription to maintain her business, then that to me would be would qualify.
Okay. Yeah. And a question from Michelle. She submitted the EIDL loan, but she did not recall seeing the box to check for EEIG.
It depends on when she applied. If she applied prior to Monday a week ago, prior to the 30th of March, she will need to go back in and reapply in order to get the advance.
Thank you. That's it.
Okay. All right. So now we're going to go into the Paycheck Protection Program. This is the one that is meant to turn into a grant. It's actually set up as a self-liquidating loan. And that's the reason why I'm saying document everything. You need to do it for both programs. It is critically important here because this loan is going to come from the bank. And from what I'm seeing and hearing, these loans are going to be, once you're approved by the bank, they need to basically close on the loan within 5 days of the approval and begin dispersing funds. So there's a good chance that most of the banks are going to do a single disbursement into a checking account for you. So it's going to be up to you to monitor how you're using the funds. That's absolutely critical to you ending up at the end of the period with the 8 weeks with a loan that can totally self-liquidate with no interest or anything. Because if you do it properly, even the interest that accrues will be paid by SBA, will pay the bank. So just keep that in mind. So this is designed primarily for payroll. They want people paid and keeping as many people on payroll as possible. It doesn't mean that you physically have to have people come to a business that's closed and sit there and twiddle their thumbs. It just means you need to put them back on the payroll in order to get these funds, and then you will pay them with those funds, even if they're sitting at home. It's designed it's an incentive for small business to keep their workers on payroll. That's what it's designed for. And this is not a loan that comes from the government. This is a loan that is provided by the bank or by the financial institution that qualifies to do SBA loans. And they provide the funding, and the SBA is guaranteeing that loan 100% to the participating lenders. You have a lot of existing participating lenders out there, and you also have lenders who are, as we speak, getting approved to do these loans specific for this program. So you want to find a bank, and what we are hearing, what we are seeing is that a lot of the smaller institutions that do these are probably your best bet. But if you currently have a banking relationship with a bank, we encourage you to start there and see what they are doing or not doing. The other thing we are finding is that some of the banks who have an existing program are only taking care of their existing borrowers or their existing customers. And part of that is because of the need for the bank to basically know their borrower. It has to do with some other federal laws that are in place. So they're a little squeamish about it. I'm hoping some of that changes as this thing continues to unfold. So what this is
Marcia,
for,
if I could just make a comment,
Sure.
just in regard to this idea of, SBA lenders that are focused on their customers. The SBA is aware of this issue, and we're actually trying to consolidate a list of banks that might be willing to, look at new customers, right? Individuals that want to apply for the PPP loan, but for whatever reason, they may not have been able to submit to their SBA lender, to their current bank. So it is an issue where it's something that the SBA is working on, assembling a portal that will actually get information on eligible banks that are accepting PPP applications from non-bank customers. Hopefully that makes sense.
Thanks, Solomon. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad to hear you guys are doing that, because I know I've talked to 4 banks and they're not, they weren't accepting anybody. They said once they get through their customer base, they might, but I haven't had any follow-up on that. So it's a very sad situation, but unfortunately it's reality. Just remember, there's always the EIDL program if for any reason you get kind of locked out of this. Yes, it has to be paid back. That one does, the EIDL program, but it's over a period of up to 30 years. So just keep that in mind. This program is actually also a much shorter window, which is one of the considerations. We're going to do a comparison towards the end where we compare the EIDL to the PPP. This is only for up to 8 weeks of payroll cost, including, you know, all of the associated benefits. It can, up to 25% can be used to pay interest on mortgages, to pay the rent, to pay utilities, those operating expenses we were talking about, but only up to 25%. So that's why the documentation is important, and you want to watch to make sure that you're using at least 75% of the funds for payroll, and then documenting that. Even if you work with a payroll company, a lot of businesses do these days, you're going to have a payroll record that you would provide to the payroll company to tell them what to pay people. And you're also going to be depositing funds with them then. So you're going to be able to show that documentation, and that'll be sufficient for you to document, yes, I used the funds for payroll. So just keep that in mind. So the small businesses and sole proprietors, they are eligible right now. This went live last Friday, April 3rd. And then contractors and self-employed individuals can begin applying this coming Friday. So what we mean by contractors, if you are a 1099 employee, your employer can't apply for you. You can, but you have the ability to apply for yourself as a 1099 contracted employee. And then, like we said, you know, if you're self-employed, you know, you have a Schedule C, yeah, you can apply. It is loans up to $10 million. And again, this is going to be determined by the bank and you, and based on, you know, the information that you were able to provide, you know, relative to how much money you need to operate for that 8-week period. Interest rate is 1%. The first payment is deferred for 6 months. So if you can document and get everything cleaned up, at the end of that, the deferred interest and the loan is forgiven, the accrued interest will be paid by SBA to the bank directly. The maturity is only 2 years for any residual loan that has to be turned into a loan. So that's another reason to be really, really careful how you're using the money, and that you're using it appropriately and documenting that, because a 2-year payback on a substantial amount of money could threaten the life of the business again. So, you know, keep that in mind. If that part is going to be a struggle, I'm going to say it again, go back to the EIDL program, even though this is debt forgiveness. So there are no collateral requirements here and no personal guarantees, which is really nice. But again, you need to use it for appropriate purposes. If there is clear language in the bill that says if you use the funds for fraudulent purposes, you will be prosecuted to the full extent of the loan, of the full authority of the government. So keep that in mind, please.
Marcia, do you have a minute for a question here from Larry?
Sure.
Zoom. He's asking, what if you don't spend the money in 8 weeks, but instead spend it over 12 months and only use 50% of the funds for payroll? Will this just become a 2-year 1% interest loan?
Yes, you got to use, if payroll is reduced by more than, I think it's 25%, then that becomes a loan. You can't do that. The key is to keep people employed at the current rate. And this is only available through June 30th. So now my understanding is that they can use the funds up through the end of the year for a selected 1 8-week period. But I don't know how that happens, because these have to be applied for by June 30th. And according to what we've been told just yesterday, that the first disbursement, or they're supposed to close these loans within 5 days of the approval. There's virtually no documentation. It's a note, and they've been told, the banks have been told they can even use their own note. They don't even have to use an SBA note for this. So I would suggest that probably that question, I'd be looking at the EIDL program instead of this, if that's going to be the case, because you're in all likelihood is going to end up with a loan doing it that way.
Okay, and Solomon from Susie in the Zoom chat, if she's wondering if anyone has received funding from either EIDL or PPP yet.
Yeah, in fact, we had quoted some numbers, but under PPP, there's been approximately 265,000 applications nationally. It's translated into about $71 billion. So money is being approved. Keep in mind that Pennsylvania didn't come online until a little later, and once the COVID disaster was declared, but certainly folks are getting approved. Anecdotally, I heard from a woman in Connecticut who she got approved. She was a consultant. She got $23,000 dropped into her account. And she said that she got it within 10 days. So, I don't have a kind of an official list other than some of the numbers I quoted.
Right. And Marcia, maybe if you could just clarify again the difference between the EIDL coming from SBA or the Treasury directly versus PPP coming from the banks.
Sure. The EIDL loan is approved by SBA and is funded by the U.S. Treasury. So that is a direct loan from SBA to the borrower. Under the PPP program, these are for current SBA lenders who are already have a document called a 750 on file with the SBA, or any new lenders who are currently applying to be able to do these loans. The loan is a bank loan, just like a standard 7A loan. It is a bank loan that carries a guarantee to the bank. In this case, the guarantee is 100%, as long as the bank does what they're supposed to do.
Okay, and question here from Uday. He just is asking if the use of funds for the PPP, if it can cover a period over the next 12 months, somewhat similar.
Not 12 months, no, it's an 8-week period. Now, what I was told the other day is that, and I think I'm back to being confused by this, because this is one Solomon and I have been talking about quite a bit. It's for only an 8-week period. So it says in the documentation that they must apply for the loan prior to June 30th. So if they're only applying to the program, say it's June 29th, and they get approved the same day, which is possible because of the way these are done, they would take disbursement on this then within 5 days prior. So I would, the assumption we've been going under is that they would be able to use these funds then for, the next 8-week period. But I don't know, Solomon, I mean,
that's correct. That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, but again, we had this conversation. That's not really the spirit of the program. In that case, that employer is basically saying, okay, my employees were collecting unemployment, a lower salary level, and now I'm finally going to catch up and pay these individuals. The point of this program was to try to keep folks whole on a full year basis by paying them their normal salary during, the shutdown period. Hopefully that makes sense, but but it appears that's allowable under the program.
Yeah, because I think this still runs, even though they can't apply after June 30th. I believe the program is eligible almost through the end of the year, like the EIDL program, to be using the funds for. So that's my understanding anyhow, from what I read. But
well, document everything. That's the key.
Absolutely. Document everything. And, we'll say that probably 12 more times yet, because that is a critical component of this, that you can be able to show how you use the funds. Okay, I think we covered these. Yes, next slide, please. So as long as I've said, you use at least 75% of the funds for payroll, and any remaining, what they're approving is 2.5 times payroll for the prior 12 months or the prior calendar year. And they're looking at that, and then whatever that payroll was, they're taking that and multiplying by 2.5. That gives you 8 weeks plus 25% to pay for the other expenses that are eligible. But it is based on the employer maintaining or quickly rehiring employees and maintaining salary levels. So you wanna get them back on the payroll. Again, they don't have to go to a physical location anywhere. If the business is closed, that just isn't the point. The point is the payroll. Who's eligible? Small businesses with 500 or fewer employees, excuse me, nonprofits, veterans organizations, and faith-based organizations. And this is the program that we were just told yesterday that farmers are eligible to apply for as well, which is something else we've never seen. Sole proprietors are eligible, self-employed people are eligible, independent contractors, as we've discussed, if you're a 1099, you are eligible to apply. Your employer cannot apply for you if you are a contractor. You must apply on your own. If you use the money for anything other than payroll costs, mortgage, interest, rent, or utility payments over the 8 weeks after receiving the loan, you're going to end up with a loan at the end and not something that will self-liquidate when the SBA pays the funds. So that would end up with you having a loan. Also, if you lose less than 75% for payroll, you also will have a loan. You have to maintain staff and payroll at less than, if you maintain staff and payroll at less than February 15th, 2020 levels, that would also result in a loan at the end of the period. To qualify for forgiveness, full-time employee headcount must be maintained, salaries and wages must be maintained, and the borrower has until June 30th to restore full-time employment and salary levels from any changes made between February 15th and April 26th. So that's important too. But since the funds are eligible, you get the funds so quickly, that shouldn't be a hardship, because if you think about it, you hire a new employee, you don't give them a paycheck the first day they get there. There's usually at least a 2-week lag before they get a paycheck. So that would allow you to put them back on payroll and then pay them when you get the funds. What counts as payroll costs? Pretty much everything. Salaries, wages, commissions, even tips, lost tips for waitresses and waiters. Employee benefits, including vacation, parental and family medical or sick leave. If you've, separate, if you basically let somebody go permanently for separation, if you gave them money when you did that, that would be eligible. Payments required for the provision of group health care benefits, including insurance premiums and payment of any normal retirement benefit that they were receiving. What counts as payroll costs for sole proprietors, independent contractors: wages, commissions, income, or net earnings from self-employment. They're typically going to use the net income you report on a Schedule C. Next. And that's the end of that slide deck. Now, what we're going to do is do a comparison of the two programs to kind of give you the highlights from each one. So while Chris gets that up, I don't know if we have any other questions, Ernie.
I'm taking a look here to see. I know there were a couple that just came in. Can the PPP be used for payroll to an employee that will be on a 1099 at the end of this year?
No, the 1099 employee must apply on their own. They can't use it for 1099 employees.
Okay. And Uday just had a clarification. He was one of the ones asked the question previously on the 12-month issue, but he's indicating that his business is not going to be open right away. In other words, it's shut down now, but won't reopen, until the governor lifts the ban. He's in the food business.
Okay, but that's what this is for. It's to give people income, whether your business is open or not, to give them payroll for at least part of the time that the business is shut down, for up to 8 weeks. So you put them back on the payroll, full understanding that the business isn't open, and you can pay them for a period of 8 weeks while you are shut down. That's the whole point, is to give them income while they've been laid off and don't have the ability to earn income.
Mhm. And Solomon, if you could just address if you've heard any updates regarding when EIDL loan disbursements might start in Pennsylvania. There's some anxious, small businesses here.
Yes, no, I completely understand the anxiety. Again, what we're being told is that individuals that have questions regarding the status of their EIDL loan should contact disaster customer service. And again, I know that this response has been slow. I have received a few responses back when I've inquired on behalf of specific individuals. The customer service line is also available, but again, I know that due to volume, that's been a challenge. So I guess the thing that I would tell everyone is just, sit tight. It's up to 21 days for a decision. If anyone has a specific question or a specific concern, they can certainly send me an email at solomon.wheeler@sba.gov, and I will send their email to disaster customer service to see if we can get a response. And that's probably, I'll leave it at that. But if there's a small business out there that has a specific concern, send me an email, and we'll see if we can get a response. But right now, they have definitely been challenged, and we're hoping that they get better as they add capacity.
Yeah, thanks, Solomon. And, again, we're going to say it again. I mean, think about the volume of loan applications they have. And, there was no way they could be ready for this. So please be patient. This is not SBA's fault. And because they're working so hard, I would hate for people to be upset with SBA because of this. They're doing everything in their power and working a lot of very long hours through the weekends, hiring additional people to assist. So just please be patient with them. All right, let's run through the comparison of the programs. So again, we talked about EIDL first, the economic injury disaster loan. That's on the left. On the right of the screen is the Paycheck Protection Program. So, what we said is, yes, EIDL is a loan made directly by the SBA. SBA is the lender. On the PPP side of things, a bank or other financial institution is the lender, and the loan is underwritten such as it is. There's not much underwriting being done. It's a series of questions they have to verify, that's all. But it is by a bank or other financial institution that is authorized to make these loans. Maximum amount of the loan on the EIDL loan, the first loan program, it's up to $2 million, up to $2 million for EIDL, with up to a $10,000 advance. Now they said that this would happen in 3 days. It's not happening in 3 days. They can't. But I do understand people are starting to get these advances. And you're not required to repay the advance that you get under this program. You just need to be able to document that you used it the way you're supposed to use it. So for the PPP program, the maximum amount of the loan is $10 million. And it's 2.5 times the average monthly payroll cost measured over the 12 months preceding the loan origination date. So, that's what gives you money in addition to that 8 weeks to use some towards other expenses, the other eligible expenses. Now this next point, I should take that out because nobody got the EIDL loan in Pennsylvania that in time that they could roll it into a PPP. So yeah, thank you, Chris. Payroll includes salaries, commissions, tips, certain employee benefits like health insurance, retirement benefits, the normal ones. They do cut it off at $100,000 and exclude any compensation for any individual employee above $100,000 to do the calculation. Interest rate As we stated on the EIDL loan, it is 3.75%. It is a loan that's for profit, and 2.75 for nonprofits. It is a loan that needs to be paid back over a period of up to 30 years. The PPP program should mostly be self-liquidating. If there is a residual balance that can't be used or can't be forgiven because it was either used inappropriately and or not documented properly, it'll be a 1% interest rate for a period of 2 years. That is a short window of time. I've said that before, and I'm going to say that again. For a small business, especially one that has suffered, losses for an extended period of time, to repay a loan. So be careful and make sure you're using this money appropriately. First payment is due on an EIDL loan 1 year after the loan origination date. Now, interest will accrue during that deferment period, so keep that in mind. And then the first payment is due 6 months after the origination date for the PPP loan. And if anything that is forgiven, the accrued interest will be paid by SBA to the bank for that period. How can you use the loan? Financial obligations and operating expenses, it could have been met had the disaster not occurred, for a period between February 15th, 2020 and December 21st, 2020. So you can see right there, the period is much greater for the EIDL loan as opposed to the PPP loan. On the PPP loan, it's debt incurred prior to February 15th. No, wait a minute, let me read this the right way. Payroll costs, group healthcare benefits, insurance premiums, and interest, but not principal, on mortgages and other debt incurred prior to February 15, 2020. What that means is that it's based on the amounts, and for example, on a mortgage, if you took out a mortgage on March 1st, that interest would not be eligible for payment under this program. It has to be in play. The utilities, the payroll, the mortgages, all would have had to be in place prior to February 15th. So keep that in mind. Collateral under the EIDL loan on the left is simply a UCC filing against business assets. There are no other assets that they're going to take. I need to take out the end of that sentence too, Chris. It's just the basic assets of the business. They aren't taking anything else. Under PPP, there is no collateral required for these loans, no personal guarantees and no collateral. Personal guarantee for the EIDL loan, the one on the left, is for any owner who owns 20% or more of the business, managing members, LLCs, and partners. So there are some guarantees on loans over $200,000 only for the EIDL program. Is this a loan forgiveness program for EIDL? No, it's a loan you have to pay back over up to 30 years. Is this PPP? Yes, PPP is designed to be a loan forgiveness period, or a loan forgiveness program for an 8-week period. So just keep that part in mind. In some cases, I've talked to businesses and in talking about their business and how it operates and what their status is and how long they think it's going to be an issue. For some people, the EIDL program, even though it's a loan that needs to be paid back, might be a better situation than the PPP program. In other cases, PPP, if they think they're just going to have an issue for a shorter period of time, then the PPP might make more sense. But you have a lot more flexibility under the EIDL program, even though that's a loan that needs to be paid back. What reduces the forgiveness? We have to just scroll down here. That doesn't apply under EIDL. It's paid for the PPP program. It's based on your the full-time employee headcount. So, but the pay down is reduced if you reduce your employee headcount because remember, they're basing it off of historic numbers. So if you reduce your payroll, your eligible people, it's going to result in you ending up either with a loan or don't take all of the funds and have the bank reduce the loan before you actually close on it. It's also if you use more than 25% for things other than the payroll. And they're looking at whatever financial information you have available. If you don't have your 2019 taxes, that's okay. You can use internal numbers if that's the case, or 2018 tax return if they do ask you for additional information. And again, the same thing on PPP. They're not going to ask you. It's up to the bank what they require of you. They shouldn't be asking for a whole lot because SBA is not requiring a whole lot. I had one this morning. I answered a question for one of our centers across the state. They were being told by their bank that they had to go to a third party, like an accountant, to certify the statements the borrower was saying, and that's not accurate, and that should not happen. I wouldn't want to be certifying something like that. That's potential liability. So I don't know. That one just didn't make any sense to me. So be cautious of some of the things. If you're hearing something that doesn't sound right, check it out. So we're assuming, as Solomon said, they were hoping that they're going to get these approved within a 3-week period. I'm thinking a little longer, but just be patient with them, please. The bank, on the PPP side of things, it's an internal approval process. So whatever the bank's internal approval process is how long it will take. And there is very little documentation once it is approved. And once they get internal approval, they literally submit a form to the SBA that answers a bunch of questions, and they should be getting approvals in many cases the same day. This is an online system. Both of the programs went live. The EIDL loan has been in place now for, I guess, 3 or 4 weeks, and the PPP program went live for small businesses and sole proprietorships on April 3rd. That was last Friday. And then independent contractors and self-employed individuals can apply starting this Friday. Affiliation is an interesting, I did cover actually affiliation for EIDL. There are some industries for which they aren't looking at affiliation, like for hotels and restaurants. If they have more than one location, it's an employee count per location. So keep that in mind. I think we pretty much, and PPP is 500 employees. Oh, sorry. It's the affiliation rule is waived under PPP for franchises and for what I just said about the restaurants and hotels is they're not applying affiliation to those rules. Who can
Marcia? Oh,
yeah.
Do you got time for a quick question here before moving on here regarding the employee count? So from Jay Law in the YouTube channel chat, he's questioning that he understands this correctly. He pays a 20-hour part-time person, and she is now, well, no, let me read it. If I pay an employee $20 an hour and she worked 40 hours, this is $800. Isn't that my cost ignoring employer's taxes?
Correct.
Okay, and this is $800 will be on my application, correct?
Yes, it's based on gross payroll, not on the net.
Okay, and then the employee full-time equivalent account, also on the PPP app, it requires number of employees. I have 2 part-time and 5 full-time. Shall I put 7, or do I come up with the FTE? It's
an FTE, so it would be those 2 part-timers of 4 hours each would count as 1 FTE.
Thank you.
And then the others are full-time.
Thanks.
Okay. I misspoke. Affiliation does apply under EIDL. So I think I explained it earlier. If the owner that's applying for the loan actually is part ownership or full ownership of another business, he or she has to disclose that, and they will look at total head count of all of the entities with which the borrower is affiliated. So they're going to look at that. It's under the PPP program where they won't look at restaurants or hotels for affiliation or approved franchises by SBA or by small business investment companies, SBICs. Who can apply? Basically all for-profit businesses, or there are a few exceptions to, as far as if they're doing something in an industry that SBA won't lend to, but pretty much for most for-profit and most nonprofit businesses can apply for EIDL. And then on the PPP side, it's including nonprofits, veterans organizations, tribal business concerns, sole proprietorship, self-employed individuals, and independent contractors with 500 or fewer employees. And that's it. So anybody have if we have any other questions, and then
Yeah, from Susie in Zoom chat, can you clarify the up to $10,000 EIDL grant is calculated? Is it $1,000 per employee up to 10,000?
Originally, that's what we were saying, but we're not saying that anymore, based on some information that SBA got. We don't know what the calculation is. It's some algorithm they use, but we aren't privy to that, and neither are the district offices at this point in time. So there's just not a calculation. Sorry.
Okay. And do you or Solomon have any insight in terms of how they are determining the term years, whether it's 30 or less than that?
I don't have anything on that, Solomon. Do you?
So no, I don't have any explicit on how they're determining the 30-year term. Certainly, during review, if you get contacted by a loan processing officer, you can communicate what term might be best for you. But certainly, but at this point, no, we do not have a specific calculation on that. Also, they're going to base it on your ability to repay, and they're going to make that enable. They want to enable the business to pay back the loan, and they want to make that as easy as possible.
Thank you.
Yeah, the whole goal here is to keep businesses open, and keep them in business. So they're not going to try to make it too onerous.
And from Ed, can you utilize more than 75% of the loan for payroll costs on the PPP?
Yes, it's just they can't use more than 25% for the other expenses.
Gotcha. And from Sam, how does a 1099 contractor apply for a loan?
They'd go on, 1099, they're going to go to the bank. There's a very simple application form that'll be filled out, and just, you're going to have a business name that you're trading as, and applying, based on your Schedule C information. So, or the 1099 is what they're saying. So, and like I said, this is a means of getting an application into the system. So the bank is going to require whatever information they need, that they know they need in order for the application to be submitted to SBA, because this is not a fill in the blank as much. It's like a 2-page document that the borrower completes, takes it to the bank, and then the bank, will probably require some kind of information, perhaps the last year's tax return or something, so that they have something to base those numbers on. That's they're not asking for a lot.
Thank you.
Sure. I guess let Chris do his.
Yep.
Cybersecurity is so important, and Chris is going to address that for everybody. So
all right.
Listen carefully.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you, Marcia. Yeah, cybersecurity is important all the time, obviously, but especially now. Cyber criminals thrive in an environment where there's chaos and confusion, where there are more questions than answers, and that certainly characterizes the current moment. As such, I want you to remember one acronym, if nothing else, and that is BS. In this case, I mean be skeptical. Be skeptical of all communications that you get, whether it's phone calls, emails, text messages purporting to be from the SBA or a lender. I would encourage you to bookmark the SBA.gov website, bookmark your lender site, interact with those sites through those bookmarks that you've created versus clicking on links or following links that you might get in a text message. Do your best to verify the authenticity of the person sending you the message, that the sender's address ends in @sba.gov or from your lender's institution. If you have any doubt whatsoever about the authenticity of that message, please do send that along to an SBDC consultant, or you can forward it along to me. You can reach me at info@pasbdc.org, and I'd be happy to take a look and double check that for you. If you do send along any messages to us, do not include any attachments. We want to make sure to continue to preserve your privacy and security. And again, just be skeptical of any communications you receive. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Well, we are at the end of today's presentation. I want to thank our participants for some excellent questions and for joining us this morning. We will be holding these every morning at 9 o'clock, so you're welcome to rejoin tomorrow, where there'll be any updates that we may receive this afternoon. And I want to thank Solomon Wheeler for joining us from SBA and providing clarification and insight, and Chris for his cybersecurity memo and reminder, and for assisting Marcia, and finally Marcia for another excellent presentation and guide to clarifying some challenging points on the application process. Thank you all, and take care, and best of luck.
Take care.